fantastic book, The Psychology of Money. And the core idea? It's simple, but honestly, pretty revolutionary. When it comes to your money, it's less about what you know and way more about how you act.
So let me just start with a question, okay? Who do you think is better with money? A janitor or a Harvard-educated executive? Now stick with me because the answer might just flip everything you think you know about wealth on its head.
All right, first up, let's meet the janitor. This is Ronald Reed, and his bio is, well, it's a little unusual. It lists him as a philanthropist, an investor, a janitor, and a gas station attendant. Yeah, you heard that right. Not your typical resume, is it?
So this guy, Ronald Reed, he lived this incredibly simple life up in rural Vermont. I mean, for 25 years, he was fixing cars. For another 17, he was sweeping floors at a JCPenney, lived in the same little two-bedroom house his whole adult life. His big hobby? Chopping firewood.
Seriously. So when Ronald Reed passed away in 2014, he was 92 years old. And get this, he left behind an $8 million fortune. Yep, $8 million. This humble janitor was secretly a multimillionaire.
So how on earth did he pull that off? I mean, was it the lottery, a long-lost rich uncle? Nope, none of that. His secret was almost boringly simple. He just saved whatever little bits of money he could from his paychecks. He put that money into good, solid blue-chip stocks, you know, the big, stable companies. And then he just waited for decades. He let the magic of compounding, you know, where your money starts making its own money, do all the heavy lifting.
Okay, now let's switch gears and meet our second guy. This is Richard Fuscone, and he is the complete polar opposite of Ronald Reed. This guy had an MBA from Harvard, a big-shot career as an executive at Merrill Lynch. I mean, he was the definition of the financial elite.
Fuscone did so well for himself, he actually retired in his 40s to focus on philanthropy. But his lifestyle, wow. He lived in this massive 18,000 square foot mansion. We're talking 11 bathrooms, 2 elevators, 2 pools, and get this, a maintenance bill of over $90,000 a month. And it was all financed with a ton of debt.
And then 2008 happened. That whole extravagant, debt-fueled lifestyle, it all came crashing down. All that debt combined with assets he couldn't sell quickly, it was a toxic mix. He was totally wiped out. He ended up declaring bankruptcy and told the judge, and I quote, "I currently have no income."
So, what happened here? How does the janitor end up a philanthropist while the Harvard MBA goes completely broke? Well, this contrast just perfectly sets up the book's main idea. Doing well with money has very little to do with how smart you are and a whole lot to do with how you behave. See, Ronald Reed was patient, Richard Fuscone was greedy, and that simple difference in behavior, it mattered way more than any fancy degree or high-powered job.
And that right there is the core of the psychology of money. The whole argument is that we treat finance like it's physics, you know, with these hard and fast rules and formulas. But really, we should be treating it like psychology because it's messy, it's full of emotions and weird human behaviors. It's a soft skill, not a hard science. That's the key.
All right, so let's dig into a few of the book's core principles that really explain this difference between Ronald and Richard. And we'll start with one that's all about understanding ourselves. Principle number 1, no one's crazy.
Now this is such a fascinating idea. We all do stuff with our money that, to someone else, might look completely nuts. But the book's point is, nobody is actually crazy. We just make financial decisions based on our own very unique personal experiences with money.
I mean, think about it like this. Your personal experience with money, everything you've ever seen or been through, is just this tiny microscopic fraction of everything that's ever happened with money in the history of the world. It's an impossibly small sample size.
But here's the crazy part. That tiny little sliver of experience, it makes up something like 80% of how you think the entire world works. So, if you grew up during the Great Depression and saw your family lose everything, you're going to view risk way differently than someone who got rich in the dot-com bubble, right? Neither of you is crazy. You're just working from a completely different set of experiences.
Okay, let's move on to the next big idea, which kind of builds on this. And this one is so important. Getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two totally different things.
See, getting rich, that often takes risk. It takes optimism. It takes putting yourself out there. But keeping your money, that's a whole different ballgame. It demands pretty much the exact opposite. It requires humility. It requires a healthy dose of fear, a little bit of paranoia even. The understanding that what you made can disappear just as fast. The skill sets just don't overlap.
And that's exactly why you see these incredible stories of fortunes being won and then lost in spectacular fashion.
Right. And that failure to stay wealthy often comes down to our next principle. And this is about one of the most dangerous, most destructive forces in all of finance: the endless desire for more.
There's this great story about the author Kurt Vonnegut. He's at a party with his friend Joseph Heller, who wrote Catch-22. And Vonnegut points out that their billionaire host probably made more money that day than Heller had made from his famous novel in its entire lifetime. And Heller's reply is just perfect. He says, "Yes, but I have something he will never have: enough."
And that's the whole point, isn't it? The single hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. Modern capitalism is incredible at two things: generating wealth and generating envy. The problem is, the ceiling of social comparison just keeps going up and up and up. You will never, ever hit it. It's a game you just can't win. The only way to get off that treadmill is to decide for yourself what enough actually looks like.
Okay, so if the goal isn't just to have more and more, then what is the point? And that brings us to the last and maybe the most profound idea from the book, and that's getting to the true meaning of wealth.
You know, there's a huge irony here. We tend to judge how wealthy someone is by what we can see, right? The fancy car, the huge house, the expensive watch. But that's not wealth. That's just evidence of spending. Real wealth is what you don't see. It's the money that hasn't been spent yet. Think about it. Spending money to show other people how much money you have is literally the fastest way to have less money.
So what is true wealth? Well, it's the nice car you didn't buy. It's the first-class upgrade you turned down. It's all the financial assets that haven't been turned into stuff yet. That's what gives you options. That's what gives you freedom. Because really, the highest form of wealth isn't some number in a bank account. It's being able to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. It is control over your own time. That is the ultimate prize.
And so all of this leaves us with one last, really important question we have to ask ourselves. When you think about your money, what are you really truly chasing? Are you trying to use it to buy the admiration of other people with all the visible stuff? Or are you trying to use it to buy your own freedom,